that I think have given us a good factual basis to proceed in the way that we have announced.
I think it's important to note that these are just preliminary facts that we've gathered. The investigation really is starting today. And so we will now be doing a lot of our evidence gathering in cooperation with the Ferguson Police Department and its city leaders, which will include any number of ways to talk to people and gather evidence directly from the police department. So it is indeed, today is really the first step in the investigation.
If I could ask General Holder, what led into the decision to open a pattern or practice investigation against the Ferguson Police Department, but not to do the same with regard to the county police? And since your COPS office has already been advising the county police for some weeks now, do you see any potential for conflict moving forward with them looking and working with the county police?
So over the last several weeks, we've received a lot of information from residents and other places that caused us to think that indeed there was a potential pattern or practice of unconstitutional policing there. And that in combination with the willingness of the local government to work with us caused us to open the pattern or practice. It's not to say, however, that if we, in the course of our investigation, determine that there are facts that lead us to other jurisdictions nearby, or to the county, we reserve the right to expand our pattern and practice investigation to other jurisdictions, including the county. But at this point, given that the county is training the Ferguson Police Department, we felt that the immediate technical assistance that comes from the collaborative reform that the COPS office provides would be an appropriate first step for the county, and Ron can speak to that.
Yes. So we have started the technical assistance actually a couple weeks ago. And really for us, the collaborative reform process is a form of technical assistance. So we'll build on that. So we have initial consultations, talked about next steps, how to engage in community policing. The collaborative reform process now will allow us to do in-depth assessments, organizational assessments, identify where there's deficiencies, and come up with recommendations on how to advance community policing for the county. Now the county voluntarily is going to participate in this because they do provide training for most of the agencies, if not all the agencies, in St. Louis County. So in this way, this effort will not only benefit St. Louis County, but it will be Ferguson and the other 50-plus cities inside the county, because the technical assistance we provide, part of our agreement with St. Louis County Police Chief, will make it open to not only St. Louis County, but all the police agencies, and in my conversation with the Highway Patrol, to their troopers as well. So this part of the equation is really about advancing community policing, constitutional policing through technical assistance, but doing so in a manner that does have an objective, independent assessment, so we know exactly what we're dealing with.
How concerned are you that, in regards to the timing of this investigation, that it could inappropriately influence the grand jurors who are looking at evidence in the Michael Brown shooting?
Well, as I said, we are announcing today the beginning of an investigation, and one should not draw a connection between what we are doing today and the matter that the grand jury is in the process of considering, in addition to the fact that we have our own independent investigation going on into the shooting. I think that these are separate matters. I work with grand juries myself as a prosecutor, and I know that grand juries have the capacity to keep separate those things that should be a part of their considerations. And I'm confident that this will not have an impact on the grand jury process.
Mr. Attorney General, can I ask you, since we're talking about the Civil Rights Division and Civil Rights Investigation, about an investigation into another shooting, a racial incident? There's a big announcement that you made years ago about the investigation into the Trayvon Martin shooting. Have you ever finished that civil rights investigation? Are you ever going to finish that?
That investigation is ongoing. In fact, in anticipation of that question, I asked, give me, as best we can, where do we stand? That matter is ongoing. There are active steps that we are still in the process of taking. There are witnesses who we want to speak to as a result of some recent developments. So that matter is still underway.
When you opened the preliminary inquiry for patterns and practices, what day did that happen? And also, the Ferguson Police Chief seems to believe that you are investigating as well their hiring practices, but unless I missed it, I don't see that anywhere in your statement. Are you looking at hiring practices?
So today is the day that we're opening the investigation to the Ferguson Police Department.
Right, the preliminary inquiry, when could that be in?
That was part of intake over the last several weeks. There isn't a particular day that it started. The pattern and practice investigation is going to cover 4 particular areas. One is going to be the use of force, excessive use of force. The second is going to be the stops, searches, and arrests. We are also going to be looking at the manner in which the Ferguson police treat detainees in the Ferguson City Jail, and we'll also just be looking at discriminatory policing generally.
So hiring won't be part of that?
It is not part of our initial assessment, but of course we reserve the right to expand the investigation to include that if we find indeed that there are potential issues there.
Well, why wouldn't that be a logical thing, given the complaints in the community that with a community that's 2/3 black, there's only 4 police officers who are black on the police force?
Those numbers don't in and of themselves prove that there is discriminatory policing within a jurisdiction. So it's one of the factors that we'll consider if we indeed need to expand the investigation.
Can you give a general timeline that?
What can you tell us about the investigation into the Chicago Police Department? There are so many different civil rights investigations into police departments. What can you tell us about that one? And that involves police shootings. So the FBI is involved, civil rights. Can you bring us up to date what's going on in Chicago?
We do not have to my understanding, we do not have an open investigation to the Chicago Police Department.
Civil rights division. What about any other investigations by the Department of Justice?
We do not have any open investigations into the Chicago Police Department as far as we can tell.
Do you see anything in the response to the shooting, sir, that would make that part of necessary for a civil rights investigation? I mean, I know there's going to be the cops office review in terms of training and whatnot, but was there anything that would drag any of the police response to the protests and whatnot into the pattern and practice investigation, or is that not on the table?
Our pattern and practice investigation is going to concentrate in the 4 areas that I outlined, but of course we will examine all the facts that we find, including potentially the response to the protest, although I think it's important to note that the county requested and cops will provide an after-action review of the demonstrations and the response to demonstrations, which Ron can comment on.
One clarifying point, if I may, before the next question, is you mentioned about just the training aspect. So the after-action will definitely go more than training. We'll look at it from beginning to end. Responses, that would include talking to officers, community members, leaders. I think it will be a little bit more comprehensive than just a training aspect. And clearly along the way, if we see something that needs to be referred, we work very closely with our brother and sister components in the Department of Justice. We will pass information forward as necessary. But this was at the request of the St. Louis County Police Chief.
Well, hold this a minute. I mean, one thing just to make clear, as I indicated in my remarks, we'll let the facts and the law take us where it is appropriate. And in response to the question that I think maybe Pete had raised about this whole question of diversity, if we have a basis to believe that part of the issues out there, should we find any, is a lack of diversity on the police force, that is something clearly that we will look at and make recommendations with regard to. This is something that we've done in other jurisdictions, and this would not be something that is off the table in our examination in Ferguson.
All right, thank you. I know we're taking a few more questions. The next one's going to be from Eric Tucker.
All right, you've been listening to a news conference in Washington, D.C. Attorney General Eric Holder announcing more details on the Pattern and Practices Division, the investigation into the Ferguson Police Department. The Assistant Attorney General there calling some of those practices unconstitutional policing. We also learned that the St. Louis County Police Department is part of what's called a collaborative reform effort being led by the Justice Department as well. So lots of things to analyze and look at here. We will do it all for you. We have team coverage on this tonight.